I thought I had it all figured out. 4 years with Katie, 6 months engaged, and a lifetime of happiness ahead of us. At least that was the plan, until that fateful argument in our Boston apartment. The words came out of her mouth like poison, shattering everything I believed about us. "You think you are my only option." Her voice dripped with contempt, her eyes cold. I stood there, 29 years old, wondering if anything in my life was real anymore. Let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button to see what I did next that she never saw coming. Meeting Katie was like winning the lottery without buying a ticket. We crossed paths at a tech conference in downtown Boston 4 years ago. I was presenting a new software development framework my team had created, and she was there representing her marketing firm. Our eyes met across the crowded networking session, and within minutes we were deep in conversation, ignoring everyone else around us. Katie was everything I had ever wanted in a partner. With her flowing auburn hair, quick wit, and infectious laugh, she turned heads wherever we went. She worked as a marketing executive at a prestigious firm, climbing the corporate ladder with impressive speed. Men constantly vied for her attention, making me wonder what she saw in a regular software developer like me. From our first date at a small Italian restaurant near the harbor, I was completely smitten. We connected on every level: intellectual discussions, shared love of obscure indie films, and the same offbeat sense of humor. Within 6 months, we had moved in together, merging our lives seamlessly. Every morning, I woke up amazed that this incredible woman had chosen me. When I proposed on our 3rd anniversary, I had saved for 6 months to afford the perfect diamond ring. I took her to Menton, the most luxurious restaurant in Boston, and got down on one knee after dessert. The look of joy and surprise on her face when she said yes made every penny worth it. We spent that night planning our future together, building a home, starting a family, traveling the world. The following months were filled with wedding, planning, house hunting, and dreams of our future. We created Pinterest boards of ceremony ideas, toured venues, and debated between honeymoon destinations. Katie wanted a spring wedding in the botanical gardens, and I was happy to give her everything she desired. Deep down, though, a small voice occasionally whispered that I was punching above my weight. Katie was gorgeous, connected, and could have had anyone. Sometimes I caught her glancing at other men who drove nicer cars or wore more expensive watches than I could afford. But I pushed those thoughts away, focusing instead on being the best partner I could be. I worked extra hours to save for our future, surprised her with thoughtful gifts, and supported her career ambitions wholeheartedly. She was my world, and I believed I was hers too. The first subtle changes began about 3 months after our engagement. Katie started coming home later, citing team meetings and client dinners as reasons. At first it seemed natural. Her company was handling a major new account, and as a senior marketing strategist, she was deeply involved in the pitch process. Her appearance began to shift in small ways too. She refreshed her wardrobe with designer pieces I knew we could not really afford on our budget. Her makeup became more elaborate, even for ordinary workdays. She started going to the salon weekly for blowouts instead of her usual monthly visits. When I commented on these changes, she laughed it off, saying she needed to look the part to move up in her company. Then came the secretive phone habits. Katie, who once would scroll through social media while lounging beside me on the couch, now took calls in another room. She kept her phone face down and took it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. Several times I noticed her quickly switching screens when I walked into the room. The wedding planning that had once excited her seemed to become a burden. She canceled appointments with vendors last minute, claiming work emergencies. When I suggested we set a date, she became evasive, saying we should not rush into anything. These subtle shifts felt like puzzle pieces that did not quite fit, but I convinced myself it was just pre-wedding nerves or work stress. One evening I planned a special night to help her relax. Champagne, her favorite takeout from the little Thai place she loved, and a movie she had been wanting to see. But throughout dinner, her attention remained fixed on her phone thumbs, typing rapidly. When I asked who she was messaging so intently, she snapped that it was work, and I should not be so controlling. That was the first time I felt a genuine chill between us, like a cold draft seeping under a door I thought was closed. The first real clue came on a rainy Sunday morning. Katie was in the shower, and her phone kept buzzing on the nightstand. Normally, I would never check her messages, but something about the frequency of the notifications made my stomach knot. When I glanced over, I saw several messages from someone named Alex on the lock screen. Got your email. Looking forward to our private review tomorrow. Wear that blue dress again. My hand hovered over the phone, tempted to unlock it and read more, but I heard the shower turn off. I moved away quickly, my mind racing with questions. Who was Alex? What kind of private review required a specific dress? I said nothing that morning, observing Katie instead, as she hummed while getting ready applying perfume on a Sunday, when we had no plans to go out. Over the next 2 weeks, I paid closer attention. Katie mentioned work often, but never any Alex. One night while she slept, I carefully checked her recent email contacts and found him Alexander Thornton, newly appointed marketing director at her company. His LinkedIn profile showed a polished man around 40, with salt and pepper hair, and the confident smile of someone used to getting what he wanted. The knot in my stomach tightened. I began noting patterns. Katie received texts from Alex almost daily, usually followed by her announcing she needed to work late. She started having weekend work emergencies that had never been part of her job before. Twice she came home with the lingering scent of unfamiliar cologne. I checked our shared location app, a feature we had enabled years ago for safety. Multiple times Katie was not at her office when she claimed to be working late. Instead, she was at upscale restaurants across town, or once at an address I later identified as a luxury apartment building in Back Bay. Her social media offered more clues. Alex commented on her professional posts with winking emojis and inside jokes. In one photo from a company event, they stood closer than colleagues typically would, his hand resting just above her waist. The evidence was circumstantial, but mounting each small discovery, adding to my growing suspicion. The weight of these discoveries crushed me from the inside. I lost sleep, lost appetite, lost focus at work. Friends noticed my distraction, but I could not bring myself to voice my fears. Saying them aloud would make them real. Instead, I carried the burden silently, hoping I was wrong, praying for an innocent explanation. After 3 weeks of this slow torture, I could not take it anymore. I waited until we were both home on a Friday evening, Katie having canceled our dinner plans with friends due to alleged exhaustion from work. As she lounged on our couch, once again absorbed in her phone, I finally spoke up. I asked her directly if something was going on, if there was something she needed to tell me. Her reaction was immediate and defensive. She sat up straight, clutching her phone to her chest, demanding to know what I was implying. I mentioned the late nights, the secretiveness, the distance I had been feeling. She accused me of spying on her, of being insecure and controlling. Her voice rose as she claimed I was suffocating her with my neediness and suspicion. I remained calm, which seemed to frustrate her further. When I specifically mentioned Alex, her face changed, a flash of panic quickly masked by indignation. "Who is Alex to you?" I asked quietly. "Just my boss," she snapped. "Are you seriously jealous of my boss? This is exactly why I cannot talk to you anymore. You turn everything into a federal investigation." The argument escalated. Katie began pointing out my flaws, my modest salary compared to her corporate friends, my lack of social connections, my tendency to prefer quiet nights at home instead of networking events. With each comparison, her voice grew more contemptuous. "Why would I cheat on you with Alex?" she said with a laugh that did not reach her eyes. "Because he makes 3 times what you do. Because he has connections all over the industry. Because he knows how to wear a suit properly." I remained silent, letting her talk herself into a corner. Finally, in exasperation, she threw her hands up and delivered the line that would change everything. "You think you are my only option," she sneered, her beautiful face twisted into something unrecognizable. The room seemed to freeze. 4 years of love and trust crystallized into that one sentence, then shattered. I felt strangely calm, as if I had been waiting for this moment of clarity. Katie must have realized what she had said. Her expression changed from anger to panic. She backtracked immediately, claiming she did not mean it that way, that she was just frustrated by my accusations. I looked at her for a long moment, seeing her clearly, perhaps for the first time. Then I said simply, "Nope, I do not think I am your only option." She stared at me, clearly thrown by my calm response. She had expected anger, jealousy, perhaps begging. My quiet dignity was not in her script. She reached for my hand, but I gently moved away. The argument ended there, unresolved, but with something fundamental between us, broken beyond repair. The weekend after our argument, I told Katie I had a work emergency requiring me to visit a client in New York. In reality, I never left Boston. Instead, I parked my car several blocks away from our favorite Italian restaurant, where, according to our shared location app, Katie was having lunch at 2 p.m. on a Saturday, an unusual time for someone who claimed to love brunch. From my vantage point across the street, I watched as Katie arrived looking more beautiful than she had in weeks. She had straightened her hair and wore a blue dress I had never seen before. 20 minutes later, a tall man with distinguished gray temples arrived. Even from a distance, I recognized Alexander Thornton from his profile pictures. He kissed Katie on the cheek, lingering a moment too long, and slid into the seat beside her, not across from her. Through the restaurant window, I took photos with my zoom lens, as they laughed intimately, his hand occasionally covering her fingers, sometimes brushing his arm. They shared dessert from the same plate, feeding each other bites like teenagers. When they left 3 hours later, they walked with their arms around each other to a nearby hotel. I felt sick, but also strangely relieved. The uncertainty was worse than the truth. Now I knew exactly where I stood, or rather where I did not stand in Katie's life. Instead of confronting them, I drove to meet Ashley, Katie's closest friend. I had always gotten along well with Ashley, and suspected she might know what was happening. When I arrived at the coffee shop, Ashley looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact. "How long have you known?" I asked, without preamble. Ashley's shoulders slumped. She confessed that Katie and Alex had been seeing each other for 3 months, since he joined her company. At first it was just flirting, then drinks after work, then more. Ashley had urged Katie to break off our engagement if she was serious about Alex, but Katie had refused. She says she is not sure about Alex yet, Ashley admitted, looking miserable. She does not want to end things with you until she knows if he is serious about her. And the part that wounded deepest, Katie had told Ashley she appreciated my stability and financial contribution to our household while she explored her options with Alex. I was a safety net, nothing more. The wedding planning delays suddenly made perfect sense. She was waiting to see if something better came along. I thanked Ashley for her honesty and left my mind racing. At home, I began examining our finances. What I found stunned me. Katie had been spending from our joint savings account on expensive restaurants, hotel stays, and gifts items that coincided with dates she was supposedly working late. In 3 months, she had depleted nearly half of our wedding fund. Checking her emails, which she had left logged in on our shared laptop, revealed messages to her sister, debating whether Alex would make a good husband, while simultaneously discussing wedding venues with me. In one particularly painful email to a college friend, she wrote, "I am keeping my options open right now. Josh is safe and stable, but Alex is exciting and connected. Ideally, I would know which way to jump before putting down wedding venue deposits." I was nothing but a backup plan, a safety school in case her first choice rejected her. 4 years of my life, my love, my trust, reduced to an insurance policy against loneliness. The pain was physical, like something tearing inside my chest. But in that pain came clarity and determination. I would not confront Katie in a dramatic scene. I would not give her the satisfaction of seeing me beg or break down. Instead, I would respond to her betrayal with the same word I had given her during our argument. Nope. While Katie thought I was nursing my wounded ego after our argument, I was actually executing a carefully crafted exit strategy. First, I secured a new apartment across town, a modern 1-bedroom, with a view of the Charles River, that I knew Katie would have loved. I paid the security deposit and first month's rent from my personal savings. Next, I opened a new bank account at a different bank and transferred my portion of our savings, leaving Katie's contributions untouched. I calculated exactly what was mine, based on our deposit records, taking not a penny more, despite the temptation. After discovering her misuse of our wedding fund, I consulted with a lawyer about the engagement ring. Since I had given it as a conditional gift predicated on marriage, and Katie had broken that condition through her infidelity, I was legally entitled to ask for its return. The lawyer drafted a simple letter explaining this, which I would leave for Katie. I systematically updated my address on all important documents, redirected my mail, and notified my employer of my new contact information. I told only my closest friends and family about what was happening, swearing them to secrecy until I had completed my plan. They were shocked, but supportive, offering help with the move and shoulders to lean on. While Katie was at work, I began slowly removing my possessions, taking only what was undisputedly mine, and nothing we had purchased together. I made an inventory of shared items, with estimated values, proposing a fair division in the letter I was drafting. The final piece fell into place when Katie announced she would be attending a marketing retreat the following weekend. A quick check of her emails when she was in the shower confirmed my suspicion. It was actually a weekend getaway with Alex at a luxury resort on Cape Cod. She had even used our joint account to purchase new lingerie for the trip. The morning of her departure, I helped her carry her luggage to her car, playing the role of supportive fiancé perfectly. I kissed her goodbye, told her to have a productive retreat, and waved as she drove away, her eyes avoiding mine in what I now recognized as guilt. The moment her car turned the corner, I sprang into action. I had scheduled movers to arrive within the hour. They worked efficiently, loading my remaining possessions into their truck while I supervised. By afternoon, all traces of my presence in the apartment were gone, except for the items I had deliberately left behind. On the kitchen counter, I placed the engagement ring in its original box. Beside it, I left my letter and a USB drive containing copies of all the evidence I had gathered, screenshots of her location history, contradicting her stories, photos of her with Alex bank statements, showing her misuse of our joint funds, and copies of emails discussing her indecision between me and Alex. The letter was simple and dignified. I explained that I knew about her affair with Alex, including specific dates and locations. I outlined how I had divided our assets, fairly taking only what was mine. I wished her well with Alex or whoever she ultimately chose, but made it clear that I would no longer be an option in her life. I ended with the words that had become my mantra, as I said, "Nope, I do not think I am your only option. And clearly, you are no longer my only option either." My last act was sending a group email to our families and wedding party, informing them that the engagement was off due to irreconcilable differences. I did not mention Katie's infidelity out of respect for the relationship we once had, simply stating that we had grown apart and wanted different futures. I apologized for any inconvenience and offered to reimburse anyone who had already booked travel for the wedding. I turned off my phone, knowing Katie would call when she discovered what I had done. I checked into a hotel for the night, giving myself space to process the end of what I had thought would be my forever relationship. I felt a strange mixture of grief and liberation, like I had set down an impossibly heavy burden I had been carrying for months. The next morning, I awoke to 37 missed calls and dozens of texts from Katie. She had returned early from her weekend with Alex, after receiving frantic calls from her sister, who had checked on the apartment at Katie's request and found my letter. Katie's messages ranged from furious accusations to tearful pleas for another chance. I did not respond to any of them. Instead, I went to my new apartment and began unpacking, arranging my new life piece by piece. Friends came by with food and moral support, expressing their pride in how I had handled the situation with dignity. My parents called to say they were sad about the broken engagement, but relieved I had discovered Katie's true character before the wedding. A week later, I heard from mutual friends that Katie was in crisis mode. Alex had distanced himself from her once the affair became public knowledge at their company. Her sister had found the engagement ring and evidence expressing disgust at Katie's behavior. Most devastating for Katie, her parents, whom she deeply respected, had made their disappointment clear, refusing to sympathize with her attempts to paint herself as the victim. Katie continued her campaign to win me back, sending heartfelt letters, having flowers delivered to my workplace, and even showing up at my parents' house to plead her case. I remained resolute. The trust was irreparably broken, and I deserved better than being someone's backup plan. 6 months later, I had settled into my new life. The promotion I had been working toward came through partly because I had channeled my emotional energy into exceptional performance. I had redecorated my apartment to reflect my own taste, rather than compromising with Katie's preferences. I had even started dating again, casually taking things slow, and being upfront about my recent experience. I ran into Katie at a tech industry event downtown. She had lost weight and looked tired but still beautiful. We spoke briefly awkwardly. She told me Alex had been transferred to the company's London office amid rumors about his pattern of dating subordinates. She admitted she had made the biggest mistake of her life and learned a painful lesson about taking people for granted. I wished her well genuinely. Time and distance had dulled the sharp edges of my pain, leaving me with valuable insights rather than bitterness. I had learned to recognize red flags in relationships, to trust my instincts, and to value myself enough to walk away from situations where I was not truly valued. The experience taught me that sometimes the most powerful response is not an emotional outburst, but a calm, deliberate no. Katie had asked if I thought I was her only option, expecting me to fight harder to keep her. Instead, my nope and subsequent actions showed her that she had never been my only option, either that choosing myself was always available to me. In the months that followed, I rebuilt my confidence, piece by piece. Friends remarked that I seemed more assertive, more comfortable in my own skin. Dating was different now, too. I no longer felt grateful when someone chose me, but rather assessed whether we were truly compatible and what we could bring to each other's lives. The engagement ring eventually sold at auction, and I donated half the proceeds to a charity supporting victims of domestic abuse, keeping the other half to start a house fund for my future. A future that would now unfold according to my doom choices, not as a backup plan to someone else's ambitions. Looking back, I am almost grateful for that terrible argument and Katie's revealing sneer. Without it, I might have married someone who did not truly value me, spending years trying to prove myself worthy of love that should have been freely given. Instead, I discovered my own worth and the courage to demand a relationship based on mutual respect and honesty. Sometimes, the most painful endings lead to the most necessary beginnings. I was no longer her option, and she was no longer mine. In losing what I thought was everything, I found something far more valuable myself. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have confronted Katie and Alex directly, or do you think my quiet exit was the right approach? Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember to always know your worth is never determined by someone else's inability to value you.